Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this summertime special webinar that we have that EFT are putting on for us this afternoon. It's good to know that the three of us on the panel are not the only people working today, so it's great that everybody's able to join us. This afternoon we're really going to be talking about the future of supply chain, the customer-centric, technology-driven supply chain. And we've titled it The Art and Science of Achieving a Customer-Centric Supply Chain. We've done that very specifically to talk about not only the hard side of this being in the technology and processes, but actually in the softer people side of things as well. And I'm delighted that this afternoon we have two very eminent gentlemen to join us. We have John Tomlinson, who's the Supply Chain Director from John West Foods. John West Foods is part of a larger corporation called Thai Union. And for those of you in the UK, you'll certainly know the brand of John West, and other countries certainly will know some of their brands as well around the world. We also have Johan Jemdahl to join us. Johan is the CEO from Greencarrier Freight Services based in the Nordics. Both gentlemen have a lot of experience not only in supply chain in different industry sectors, but in particular with the customer-centric side of things as well, and really looking at the customer experience. So good afternoon to you, John. Good afternoon to you, Johan.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Welcome to you both. We look forward very much to receiving your presentations, but at the same time having a bit of a conversation around this whole topic. So let me just kick off the session, if I may, by introducing some of the background to this. What I'm just going to do is just sneak over to my screen, if I can, which is there. So hopefully that's come through. As you can see, we've got all of the different companies that are taking part in this. But I was particularly pleased to be invited to join this because of the title that we've put up being the art and the science. So much today we hear about is technology driven and falls into the science part. Very many of the projects that you see today are all about changing processes and implementing technology. Whereas when we're talking about the customer, it's without doubt we need all three areas here. We need both the technology, we need the processes, but we need to focus on people. Because for an organization to move into a customer-centric supply chain, there's going to be a lot of focus on behavior change and culture change. And I know that both my fellow panelists have got things to say on that topic. And the reason that I'm particularly pleased to be able to join this is my company, Hughenden Consulting, as you can see from this, actually focuses very much on the people side of things, understanding both the process and the technological side of things. So I'm particularly keen to see if we can push the conversation towards the kind of change that's required, not only in terms of investment in things you have to buy, the technology and so forth, but what do we have to do to behave differently, to think about the customer first. So our view is very much about working together as a team. Teams can always do better than individuals. That's our belief. And I'm hoping that both my eminent colleagues here can tell us more about how they've achieved that. Just to give you an idea about where we draw our knowledge from as a consulting organization, we've worked in 44 different countries around the world with many different companies that are both global and national, and across all sorts of different technologies and industries, from oil to food to pharmaceuticals to heavy engineering. And the one thing that I see across all of this is that we are all challenged with the same thing, and particularly with regard to the customer. I'm not entirely sure everybody knows who the customer is yet, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. But these are some of the organizations with whom we have drawn some of our knowledge and some of the things that we get to know about. But I also have pleasure in working with EFT in chairing a number of their conferences around the world. And one of the things that occurs to me when I do this is just listening to what the topic of the day seems to be. Now, my experience, certainly in 2016, was that nearly all of the conferences I attended, which included retail, supply chain specific and pharma ones, they focused very much, everybody was talking very much about the practical aspects of delivery. How do you do this? So a lot of the conversation was around DCs, RDCs, fulfillment centers. How do you actually do this? And for me, all the way through the year, this was the dominant subject. Very technical, very specific. Now we're only halfway through this year, but certainly in the conferences that we've had together, we've seen a different topic coming up. And the topic has all been about the customer experience. And in listening to what everybody is saying, everybody is starting to use the word customer in almost every sentence. Yeah, the customer is king, the customer is... I'm not entirely sure that everybody understands who the customer is. Certainly when I go into the pharma sector, if I were to ask the question there and talk about the customer, they'd say the patient. When you talk to pharma companies and you look at their supply chains, not many of them touch the patient. So whilst they'll put it up as a bit of a mantra, and I totally understand why they would and completely agree with it, who are they actually talking about as being the customer? And I'm not entirely sure that everybody agrees on that. So again, that's one of the things that I'd like to get out of talking to my two colleagues here. What do they mean by the customer? And therefore, what do they mean by customer-centric? What does it actually all revolve around? Now, having done that work in the various conferences, some of the things that companies, it seems to me, need to be considering as they go through this is primarily some form of culture change. And I know that Johan's got quite a lot of words to share with us on what he feels about the culture change. But for me, this is about the same as trying to move from being a manufacturing organization to being a supply chain organization. You have to think differently about what it is that you do. So when you have an organization that focuses very much on what it does and how it runs the supply chain, to move to something that is focusing entirely on what the customer wants. And I noted that in one of the conferences recently, we were told by Amazon that every decision they take revolves around what the customer wants out of this. So to change that requires a huge deal of thinking in a business. And alongside of that is obviously then the behavior that goes with it. You don't change a culture just for culture's sake. You do it because you want a different behavior to come out of it. So what does that actually mean? What kind of thinking do we mean? And what behaviors do we want to change? What's the good behavior we've got? But what's the behavior we actually want to change? And what do we want to change it to? Now, an awful lot of people will tell me that you get what you measure. Well, if that's true, then measurement systems must come into play. So if everything is going to be customer focused, then what are we actually going to measure to know whether or not we're doing that? What are the things we have to bear in mind? Are we still talking about operational efficiency anymore? Are we talking about something else? Are we talking about full truckloads and carrier usage? Or are we talking about something else? So measurement systems, I think, is key to this. And I'm keen to know what John and Johan have to say about that. Now, a much used word that I see all around the conferences is this one, collaboration. And I like to remember that collaboration does mean working with people, but sometimes it can feel a bit like working with the enemy. And collaboration means not just collaborating externally, it means collaborating internally as well, with the same vision, same direction. And it's one of those words that's used quite freely, but actually needs a bit of depth and understanding and behavior change to understand what collaboration means. And one classic example is where many of our procurement teams are measured on lowest cost, which is pretty much a confrontational attitude with their suppliers rather than one of collaboration. That's just a simple example of one thing that needs to change as a result. And the last thing that people need to understand is this phrase, creating value for the customer. It's a bit more than just delivering on time and in full. It's a lot more about how you work with them to achieve a common goal. How do they benefit and how do you benefit out of working together out of this, rather than just a metric which is about operational activity. So for me, this whole topic about being customer-centric is going to demand change. I'm looking forward very much to hearing from John and Johan as to where they have either seen change, attempted change, maybe not achieved change, and let us know a bit about their experience on this. So I'm going to go straight over from here now to introduce John Tomlinson from John West. John, I'm sure, will tell you a little bit more about himself. And then at the end of that, we may have the opportunity just to ping one or two questions across to him. So, John, if you're ready, it's all yours.
I'm ready. Thank you for that very good introduction, Hugh. I think I will be picking up on some of those points you raised as I go through the next few pages. I just thought I'd introduce myself to begin, put a face to the name. So as Hugh said, I lead the supply chain for John West, mainly in the UK, Ireland and Holland. I moved to John West a long, long time ago, as you can see. And the fact that I've been here a long time will be relevant to the story when I go into it. Who are we? Well, we're the leading canned fish brand in the UK and Ireland. John West himself set the company up in 1857, so we're 160 years old this year. We're part of the Thai Union Group, which is one of the world's largest seafood processors. And importantly, for me in supply chain, everything we sell is wild and has to be caught. Our supply chain is global, seasonal, and highly unpredictable. And as I say, as a branded business, we've long been consumer focused. And the last 4 years, we've been on our own journey to try and become more customer-centric at the same time. So we would make that differentiation between a consumer, somebody who eats the fish, and a customer, the retailer who sells it. So I'm going to tell you the story of John West over the last 4 years. Like all good stories, it's going to have a beginning, a middle, and an end to it. So in the beginning, in 2013, we had a new sales director, a new marketing director, and they brought some new ideas and some newfangled ways with them into the company, one of which is the Advantage survey. Now, any of you are not aware, the Advantage Group survey takes place each year. Major retailers are asked about suppliers' performance, relationships, about 6 different subject areas. And in return, suppliers are asked to rate the major retailers, and it's a mix of online surveys and telephone interviews. So personally, I didn't expect much at the time. Only one customer was giving us any negative feedback. But to paraphrase Donald Rumsfeld, I think, we didn't know what we didn't know. We hadn't asked the questions, and therefore we hadn't been told any answers. But in this case, no news was bad news. In fact, very bad news. Our 2013 Advantage survey results are not good. There's no way you can dress up these results to be anything other than not good. We were bottom for customer service in our peer group of 18 businesses. So that's a super clear way of measuring your business. There's nowhere to hide in that. It's a real shock to us at the time, and certainly proves the comment about unknown unknowns. We have great brand recognition, fantastic consumer loyalty, but if the retailers aren't stocking our products and the products aren't on the shelves, then consumers just cannot buy it. So I personally was at a crossroads then. By then I'd been in my job for about 10 years, and I could probably legitimately have said, well, so what? We've been successful as John West for 150 years. Why should we change? Probably when I look back now, I think if I'd given that response, there would have been one major change, which would be me losing my job. So we didn't go that way. We went through the cycle of denial, anger, but in the end we accepted this bad news. We rallied the team for the change. That's when we began to understand what changes were possible, and by empowering the team, we could enthuse them and energize them to take on the task of moving up that league table. So no more, we don't know what we don't know. Let's go outside, let's find out what best practice is. We joined a couple of supplier forums, we made contact with other non-competing suppliers, and we began to engage and try and understand what is happening out there. We went back to basics, asked customers what they wanted. Now, that sounds very easy and obvious, but really, just try doing it. Retailers are so busy in the UK. We really struggled to get time with them. What we tried to do then before was pick out former contacts who may have retired or left retailers, get involved with them. They had a lot more time, and they could really help us understand for what life as a retailer is like. A great example, a former supply chain manager who told us, condense an entire email, he said, into the subject line, because that's all he ever read. He never actually opened any emails. Just tell me the message on the subject line, promotion okay, or promotion's not working, and then he's got enough to work on. Part of this work, we developed the first moment of truth, which was to ensure that all shoppers can find the exact product they want at the time they want it in the store. And that's what we worked to, that first moment of truth. And the second moment of truth would come then when the consumers opened a can or the pouch and taste the fish inside it. Before we can get past go, as we say, we had to do some basic things. We had to be able to deliver orders on time and in full, and only when you get through that stage, and I think, Hugh, you referred to that as the 2016, the final mile, that was the focus. We had to get that work done before you can then move on to things like building joint supply chain business plans, sharing best practices that you've found in the market with your customers as well. So that was our beginning. What happens in the middle of the story? Well, you very quickly begin to understand your customers, some of their issues that they were struggling with, and it was a lot of it about that final mile that Hugh referred to, about the practical aspects of that. They were struggling with congested distribution centres, small loads going in, 5-day-a-week deliveries. What they want is 24/7. I think we all knew that. We all had to understand how we could do that. We had to be able to understand in a low level of detail, if that's possible, with what's going on out there. And very quickly, we were able to sort of address those basics, combining loads with other suppliers through consolidators, getting involved with retailers collecting from us, so that very quickly, in the space of about a year, we were able to dramatically change the way we deliver into customers. I think that you would say would be the first stage of the process: fix the basics, and then how do we move on? We had to change our structure. I think Hugh referenced this as well. This will come out to be, I think, one of the most important points I make today. We were working, I think it was one of the guys at Simply Supply Chain gave us this model. Effectively, we were working with customers like a bow tie. Everything was channeled through a salesperson into a buyer. All communications were going that way. So our sales guys were getting stuck talking about supply issues rather than driving the business forward. Remember, the buyer's very busy. He's only got time to talk about a couple of things. We want to talk about increasing sales. He's probably just got a few supply issues from his supply team internally getting on his case. So we had to address that. How do we address that? By, first of all, looking at ourselves. If you imagine this was my structure, Chris Daffy, if you Google him, his website, he's a world-renowned customer service specialist. He encouraged us to use this simple model of red and blue. Red team members work with customers, blue team effectively internal, working with suppliers. As you can see from that chart, we had a lot more blue than red. Now, we found this a really simple way of visualizing the business. I did it for my team, and we then moved to look at our whole John West business in a similar blue and red way. I think unfortunately Theresa May has spoiled this simple concept of blue and red, and it's now more probably familiar to people as a way of taking your wheelie bins out as her blue jobs and red jobs with her husband. But for us, it was a very simple model, and we had to restructure. Now, restructure is probably a bland HR expression. I don't like it. I don't think it expresses the gravity of what's really happening, which is usually real people losing real jobs. So please don't think that this is something we did lightly or without a lot of thought and a lot of hand-wringing. But in 2015, we rebalanced that structure. And you can see we've got a lot more red than blue now. Where we could, we tried to automate blue jobs, we tried to subcontract blue jobs and replace those people with red jobs. So now we've got a team that's much more able to get involved and spend time with our customers. And now, coming to the end of the story, you'll all be pleased to hear that. Where do we get to? We've been able to make the customers the focus of what we do. We've been able to improve communications with our customers by having more people there, more actual face-to-face visits if the retailers are available, to talk about the collaboration plans, to talk about joint supply chain plans. That's allowed our commercial team to focus on selling and not be distracted by other issues. As we get into the low level of detail on some things, we've been able to actually drive out savings and share those with retailers whenever possible. We've certainly improved our promotion planning, which has benefits for us in terms of avoiding out of stocks on the shelves, and it's avoided us carrying too much inventory. And best of all, we've been able to develop those joint supply chain business plans with our customers. So I would say our ability to support the business has improved. Rather than just delivering stock, we're able to focus on collaboration. That's adding value to our trading relationships. And introducing better real-time reporting internally has helped us with our decision making, helped us proactively manage issues around supply, which are always going to happen. We're clear that, especially in a business such as ours, where we have to catch everything that we sell, we're always going to have issues. And that's really what our focus is. If we're always going to have problems, how we manage them and how we resolve those problems is our challenge. So I've used these slides within the company. I've shared these with our colleagues in Bangkok and around Europe. For me, what did I learn? What did we learn? Well, first of all, look outward, not inward. And that's probably me, having been here a long time. Try and view John West as our customers view it, and indeed our suppliers who sell to us. How do they view John West? And as I say, that's particularly relevant for somebody like me who's probably at the times a bit set in my ways, having been here quite a while. So I had to change. Collaboration is not all about giving. There are mutual benefits to be had, genuine cash savings to get out of it. It does require a culture change of relentless determination. It's a 4-year project. It's not over yet. Make customer focus the heart of the whole business. We've had to work through the whole of John West, try to energize people to be customer focused, retailer focused in our case. Be ready to share bad news. If you've got bad news, share it out. And at the same time, if you're getting that message back of, well, we've done this, we've always done it like this, like we want to carry on doing it like, well, challenge that status quo wherever that's coming from. Some more learnings, benchmarking, get a real measure of what you're actually doing. I think anybody knows basic management. If you measure something, you can improve it. If you're not measuring it, it's very difficult to improve it. Talent up. We have really made an effort to recruit exceptional new talent. who can bring in new ideas, new experiences, and I guess, Hugh, to your point, that's all about changing the culture in the company. Try and think long term. It's very hard in a seasonal business like ours, but try and get out of that sort of fishing cycle that we're in and invest for the long term, not just quick wins or this season. Accept and embrace and take joy in the fact that change is a way of life. This process involved a team restructure, new team members. I think if you could turn the fishing business on its head and say, well, actually, enjoy the fact that every fishing season is different. You know, you'll never have 2 years the same in our business. Enjoy that, enjoy changing, and keep moving forward. And I think I'm sure everybody's going to say you need to keep improving to stay at number one, and I'll talk about that in a minute. As a branded business, we rely on our investment in quality, innovation, brand proposition, marketing, all of that to add value to the category. But at the same time as all those good things are happening, we rely on the supply chain to secure the in-store availability to allow customers to meet the demand from their consumers. We want to build competitive advantage. Other brands might be cheaper, but when quality, customer satisfaction, availability is so important, price alone won't secure that loyalty. We need reliability, we need trust in John West, and we need, most of anything, confidence in that supply chain that we can sustain a reputation and build that reputation with our consumers. So now, after 4 years, these are two verbatim comments from the last year's Advantage survey, so probably after 3 years. And this is really gratifying to hear that the work we're doing is appreciated, is seen by our retail partners. I like that one. They will always do their best to sort things out for us, and we can't fault them. You know, you can wish for no higher praise in our business. And then, what did that mean in terms of the Advantage survey? I think I said in 2013, for customer service, we were ranked 18th. Here we can see our gradual journey, up to 14th in 2014, up to 7th in 15, and finally to last year. Hooray, we made it to number one. Now, it would be great to say that this is our happy ending. We know we're in a continually changing world, and we've got to change with it. And I think that there will be no happy ending. This story will never end. And I think, as a final quote from Winston Churchill, this is just the end of the beginning. So that's my John West story. Thank you very much for listening.
John, thank you very much indeed. It's a fascinating story all the way through, and I'm so delighted that you've told it in the story way. It's been a great 10 minutes listening to what it is you've had to share with us. Can I just take you back to one of the things you said, and you prefaced your statement by saying, and this is probably the most important thing I'll say this afternoon, and you talked about the structure. And you talked about, then you shared with us a bit about the red and the blue customer-facing and inward-facing aspects. Now, I can see a number of people who perhaps won't have had the benefit of hearing you talk about that, assuming that if you just change the job titles, you can paint them a different colour, all will be well. I'm sure that's not the truth. What did you have to go through in terms of that structure to change those job roles so that everybody understood what they meant?
Okay, so as I said, that was a difficult process for us. Essentially, some people left, where we were able to subcontract their work, and we created new roles specifically to focus on collaboration with customers, and then recruiting into those roles, we found a real challenge to find A, people with experience, but B, good people, so we could raise the overall level of talent in the team at the same time as having the experience of managing directly in customer collaboration tasks and roles. So old blue jobs, either made redundant or subcontracted out. New red jobs really just created on a piece of paper with the help of, we went out, certainly had a lot of advice and assistance on that, and recruited into those roles on paper. It was probably a bit of a leap of faith, but I think by getting talented people with the right experience, we've been able to make those roles work.
Fantastic, thank you, John. It really just emphasised for me the amount of work and conscious consideration you put into that to make that change. So just painting the ship a different colour doesn't mean you've got a different ship.
Absolutely not. No, it's about the crew of the ship, Hugh, to carry on your nautical analogy.
Thank you. I appreciate it, John. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed for your contribution. I'm going to move across now to Johan, because I know he's also, having talked to him, got some thoughts in mind about structure. So, Johan, welcome to you again this afternoon. So, customer-centric supply chain. So, what would you share with us as your experience?
First, I must say it was a great presentation by John. I took actually a couple of print screens from it to bring with me. I will take a little bit of a different approach, and I will share my views upon some perspectives on customer centricity. First, a little bit about myself. I'm Johan Jemdahl. I'm the head of Greencarrier Freight Services. We are a freight forwarding company, the largest privately owned one in the Nordics, and we are operating across the Nordics, and we have offices in 13 countries and on the global level when it comes to deliveries and engagement, like most logistics companies. My view on when it comes to customer centricity and customer putting customers first, I started working in '95, which is now 22 years ago, and all my companies, we have had something around customer first or passion for the customer, start with customer, some sort of a tagline. The problem is that none of the companies I've worked for, we really succeed. I think one company actually, we were close to it, to doing it, but most others, we didn't really succeed. Most of our focuses were internal focus, even though we spoke about the customer, but when it came to KPIs and governance and matters and issues that we discussed in meetings, it was predominantly internal. Before coming into this role, I'm not a forwarding guy. I come from supply chains. I used to work for Ericsson and Cisco and ABB during the previous 20 years. And also sitting on the supply chains. I sitting there, I met a bunch of suppliers. And to be honest, none of them were really customer-centric either. But I guarantee all of them had some sort of a customer-focused mantra in the tagline. I think the major problem we have is that we are not really set up for it. We have it as an ambition, but we are not really set up for it as an organization. I think that goes a little bit into the way the industrial evolution has happened over the centuries. So this is a little bit my angle today. If I look a little bit, start with some value chain trends that I see. When it comes to information, obviously we have never had as much information as we have today around our business and associated areas. At the same time, we will never have as little information as we have today. Same with speed. Being fast and agile, it's really a necessity. It's not a plus, it's a necessity. At the same time, we will never be as slow again as we are today, and we have never been faster than we are. Cost, I see continuous push on costs and productivity. I see it in my company and the companies I work for. I see it on the suppliers that we are working with. I see it on the customers that we are supporting and supplying to. There's always someone else around the world that can do things cheaper. And when it comes to digitalization, it really helps disrupting the way we do business. I think most of us have gone through the digitization, going from analog to digital. but we are just scratching the surface on the digitalization, really creating value out of the digital era. And that is really something that all of us has to be on top of and figure out what that means for us. And I think it would probably have as many views on it as we have persons. Customer focus, as I said, I mean, it's always been there, but I see that supply chain strategy more and more actually are built and due to be built from a customer point of view and very much demand driven. And I think also when it comes to supply chain, I kind of like the word value chain better than supply chain. As the supply chain guy, I've always felt that we should be there for creating value and the reason why the customer buys from us and being a reason why we actually get more paid for our products and not just something that is fulfilling something that has been sold. So I kind of like the value aspect more than the supply, which for me is the more the inside and out, and the other one is more outside and in. But more and more supply chains are built from a customer's point of view. I also see that when it comes to supply chain resiliency and things that happen, it goes together with speed and cost, and also being able to live up to the promises of the customers. Most companies I work with, we are focused on being good on event management. When shit hits the fan, pardon my French, we are fairly good. But I see also a trend and been part of driving businesses in becoming much more focused on business continuity. It's like fire drills. You need to practice a lot, because when the fire happens, you really need to have it in your spinal. And I also see that we are driving much more end-to-end value chain control. That doesn't mean we own the value chain, but I see that more and more companies are looking to control their value chain. Talent, the redefinition of talent. I think that the war for talent is really here. And I view cognitive diversity and business acumen being more and more important when you hire people in supply chain. I think historically we have, and the companies that help us finding talent has been quite focused on subject matter expertise. It's still important to know your subject, of course, but where we are going, where information speed and other things is really imminent, and we have a very agile environment, we really have to have people with high cognitive diversity. And also, if you want to bring them in front of the customer, need to have business acumen. Like John said, I mean, I want all people in my organization to be think about how do we actually generate value for the customer. And the ideal, I want them to think, how can we actually sell something more to the customer? But I really want everybody to feel that they are sales. Salesman is not just a title. I want everybody to feel that they are sales. And for that, we need more and more people with some sort of business acumen. The other thing with talent that I think is the weakness from most industries, and very much so in logistics that I am representing right now, is that we tend to recruit from each other. Most people that we have and hire, we are coming from other type of orders. What I missed when I was sitting on the other side, I missed having people coming to me who know and understood my business. Most people came to talk about a great sea product or a great air product or a great intermodal product or a great warehousing product. The same thing when I've worked on the OEM side. We came and talked about a great 5G solution, 4G solutions, or services management solutions without really understanding the customer's business. And I think that's really a key trait that I'm looking at when I'm hiring. I spoke a little about agile. If I look on the old economy, I mean, we are and still, and we used to be quite hierarchically set up. The key was to really decipher, figure out what is the problem, and then have sort of convergent thinking, finding out with one solution that sort of fixes the problem. Then we wanted to deploy it and make sure that we could scale it. Scalability has been the key and is the key for the industrial year that we are on. But scalability to getting productivity is yesterday. Now it's about scalability of learning. And expertise is very much around cognitive intelligence, basically subject matter expertise. And ideally, we could replace the problem errors by a robot and automating it, and then we sort of fix it. It's very much around algorithmic thinking, mathematics, and focus on sort of profit and profit maximization. And I guess most of you recognize this from the companies that you are in. The thing is, though, of course, that facts are and facts become. I kind of like this picture because I think it tells a lot. It's taken over different content. But a lot of people have a view upon how things are that is very tainted from your background and where you're from and what input you have. So I think it's key. The notion around collaboration is really key, and to really sort out what are the facts and what are not the facts. Where I see that we are going in today's reality is becoming much, much more a learning. And it used to be that, you come from school, you took a great education, you went into a management position, then you grow, and then you came into pension. Nowadays, it's a much, much more an iterative process, and even more tomorrow. I think that when it comes to the environment around us, with all of the information and the speed and complexity that we have, and the world is really, really becoming flat. It's much more important that we, in the way we resolve problems, that we are more humble and that we discover and do much, much more interacting between engaging and learning. We develop the solution from a divergent thinking style, but basically we have many angles, many hypotheses, and we try different things rather than having the sort of one size. And we have more sort of an entrepreneurial outlook in how we resolve things, and have worked much more interacting between engaging and learning. Some people might call it trial and error, which used to be a bad word, but it's actually in an agile environment, that's how you do it. Then also around collaboration, we still need people who are subject matter experts, of course, but the whole notion around collaborating and putting people together across the whole value chain, yourselves and your organizations, as well as the customers and your suppliers, really getting that working in a transparent way is really the key. I worked for one organization. It is probably the highest performing organization I ever worked for. What was quite unique with that organization, we were about $1 billion business. We had about 2,000 people, sold our products to about 100 plus countries, and have offices in 50 countries. So we were a relatively large organization. We didn't have any org charts. We were not ISO certified. We didn't have any process charts. We had IT tools, of course, but we were extremely value-driven, super value-driven. And everything was very much allowed in the organization, except one thing, that was to complain. If we had something that we didn't like or complained about, the question always come back, so Johan, what are you going to do about it? And that was sort of indoctrinated in everyone from they joined the company. So it was an extremely agile organization. When a problem popped up, people took initiative, they gathered the people who needed to be part of trying to resolve the problem, and then they worked in a diligent manner to get it resolved, and it worked really, really well. We were later acquired by Cisco, who is an American quite structured company, and they were really, really puzzled. They never got the hook of it. Because if you work in like a Cisco or an Ericsson, something like that, you really need to decide what is the problem, who is accountable, what is the plan, what's supposed to happen when, how do we govern the progress. And we didn't work like that. At the same time, this company grew by 25% a year, and they had a net profit of over 20% a year. It was extremely collaborative and driven upon internal collaboration and flattening the organization, and being quite unprestigious about where the problems were located. So what I believe in, and where I'm leading to, is the value and the strength of dynamic network organization, where I think that we are going. I mean, we're coming from a traditional hierarchy organizations back from the early days, where every job was very neatly defined, and the people were fairly trained on it, and then it became like the Ford manufacturing line, and then we evolved that into various other bits, but we are still sort of the children of it. Then we came into the matrix to manage the big organization operating across various types of divisions, various types of geographies, but we're still a matrix, and all of us have been in matrix organizations. We know the pros and cons in it. It's great when it works. It's a hassle when things go bad, because who is actually responsible? Then we have organizations that have more councils. I mean, IBM have been running quite a lot of councils in the world, driving their business. Then we have the dynamic network model, which is where networks come together. It's a much more undefined, and it's very much more driven by the underlying value of the organization. So of course, it needs to be an operating model that's built on shared goals. If you have that, it's really strong culture. And we know that culture beats strategy, or eat strategy for breakfast, or whatever we call it. It needs to be processes that are driven around collaboration and really enhancing and enabling decision making out in the organization, so you don't have to pull it up the ladder to make the decision and push it down to make execution of it. In the fast moving tomorrow, there's no time to bring things up. It has to be decided out where the things happen, and that's what's basically real and true empowerment. The technology of course needs to help and support the engagement within the entire value chain, and I am not just looking within their own organization, even that the core really get it done, but also together with customers and employees. And I think that the digitalization that is now coming, that is really the enabler of accomplishing that tighter collaboration and engaging across the value chain. And I believe that the companies who are successful in doing it, they will really be the ones who are the winners of tomorrow. So I mean, when it comes to the net organization, I mean, the idea of it's really built for a rapidly changing environment. It is focused on maximizing the engagement between people inside, but also outside of your business, customers and suppliers. And it really provides a greater level of collaboration, and by that we should have the ability to have a much more rapid transformation. In essence, I mean, like John said, I mean, it's what brought us here won't keep us here. We're in constant transformation, so you always have to stand on your toes, like if you play tennis. Otherwise, you're going to lose the next ball. So I believe, in my experience from trying to push for a dynamic network organization, is that people like it. You drive accountability, and most people grow by being trusted, by being involved, by being listened to. The network organizations put responsibility in the hands of your employees, and they also put in their hands to expand the level of influence. Some people are not fit for it, but you'll figure that out in your organization. Some people really like a structure. They really like to know what is my area of responsibility, what am I measured upon, and that's it. Those people don't work well in the dynamic network model. On the other hand, I don't believe that those people will be the greatest performers of tomorrow. I think they were a great performance in the traditional hierarchy, but that's not what we're going to take for tomorrow. So it's very much an organization. Sorry.
No, sorry. I thought you just coming to an end. Yeah.
No, I'm soon. So very much it's a mindset shift for organization. This is very much organization, and it's difficult. It takes time. It needs to have a strong plan, and as John said, I mean, it needs to have the perseverance of really pushing it through. I mean, it's going from a profit focus to a purpose-driven organization. We still, of course, need to make profit, but we do it by focusing purpose. And people tend to be more driven by purpose, and that's engaging people. I mean, in essence, I mean, we don't want to have motivated employees. We want to have passionate employees. You may get motivated employees by giving them incentives, but you don't get them passionate. You want to go from hierarchy to network. You want to go from controlling to really empowering the organization, and really go from planning that first we do that, and then we do that, and then we do that, to in more an experimentation where you learn and engage. You go in and out of learning and engaging, and by that moving the ball forward. And going from sort of sitting on information and having information makes me key, it makes me more important, it makes it difficult to replace me, to having a very transparent organization. And for that, you need a safe environment. And that's a leadership responsibility. We have to create safe environments for people to ask for help, for people to offer help, for people to share information, for people to challenge in the status quo. I mean, we basically want people to take initiative without being asked. We want them to challenge what things that could be done better, and we really want them to be there for more than just doing the tasks that they've been assigned to do. Last but not least, I mean, I talk a lot about plans. I mean, everybody has a plan until they get the punch in the mouth. So planning is nothing. Planning is everything. The world is always going to change around us. So we have to have a plan, but we need to be extremely agile in a round of realigning it. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck with trying to accomplish what we were to do. That's going to be obsolete. That is actually my last.
Fantastic, Johan. Thank you very much indeed. I'm fascinated by the fact that both of you talk a lot to what people traditionally call soft skills, but I think it's more advanced skills, not soft skills. When you talk about emotional intelligence, when you talk about up talent and things like that. So it's really interesting that you're focusing very much on the people side. We have one question I'd just like to put to both of you, and it's going to require a fairly short answer, but hopefully you'll shed some light. If you look back at all your experiences of moving towards a customer-centric supply chain, what would you tell our audience was the biggest challenge you had to overcome, or some advice on the biggest issue you think they might have to overcome? So Johan, let me put that to you first.
The biggest challenge that I face is that, I mean, the companies I've worked with have been relatively large, and the problem is to really get it across the organization. The other thing that sort of interrupts that, it tends to be some problem popping up, or some greater things that need to be focused that comes from the outside, normally from management. That takes a lot of the attention, and we sort of go back to square one.
Yeah. So it's about paying attention to the urgent rather than the important.
Exactly.
Fantastic. John, what would you say were the biggest challenges you faced?
I think starting at the beginning, it would be like the old story about the first step for a recovering alcoholics is to understand that you're an alcoholic. I think our first was to get through that anger and denial phase and realize that, yes, there is an opportunity to get better here. So that would be, I think, our own sort of culture issue to get through. And then second for me would be getting the right talent. It is just so important to get the right people at the moment. And that was my other challenge, getting out there in the market and making John West attractive to them when I could find somebody who was attractive to John West.
Well, I imagine there are HR departments and recruitment consultants rubbing their hands together with joy at that statement. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed both for both very valuable contributions. I learned a lot from listening to you both out of that. I think the one message that I'll take away from it was probably nicely summed up by Johan, but actually both of you said it. Customer-centric supply chains today, just not set up for it. So the one thing you have to do is make that change and change the organization to be set up to do exactly that. So a very nice, almost a one-line summary of it. Thank you very much indeed for your contribution this afternoon. I hope that our audience enjoyed listening to you, and we look forward to the next webinar at sometime later in the year. I will say one thing, that if you'd like to know more about this kind of topic, don't forget that there is the 3PL Summit and Chief Supply Chain Officer Forum in October in Venlo, October 16th to 18th, which of course is being organized by EFT. So get yourself along to that and listen to even more experts on the same subject. So with that from me, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.